Hey, what's up? I'm a diagnosed narcissist, and I wanted to talk about the red pill. Now, before I say whatever I'm going to say in regards to my disorder, I just want you to keep in mind that I'm not a licensed professional. So, with all that being said, I thought this would be an interesting topic to dissect. I mean, not just as a narcissist, but I guess as a male in general, because, if you are a guy, at some point or another, you spend enough time on the internet, you're bound to you know, cross this whole like red pill thing in general because it claims to, tell you the truth in terms of what a man is supposed to be, how a man is supposed to behave, whatever, blah blah blah, things like that. And I was always on the fence about this like ideology. I don't want to say that like I die hard like support it or something, but I don't necessarily take the other end of it where I guess somebody would say, "Oh, that's nothing other than pure misogyny. It's just sexism, blah blah blah, yada yada yada." Um, I think if you look at it with, I don't know what is the word, like nuance or something. I think both angles are true, just depending on what part of it that we're specifically talking about. But I guess okay, I think as a narcissist, there are things that are appealing about it, and I will get into that as I go along. But I guess like the most like straightforward and like simplistic thing about it that I can see how it would appeal to a narcissist is I guess like the egotistical aspect of it. Because, when you deal with a lot of this stuff with this whole like traditional masculinity sort of thing, it prompts you to quote unquote like take charge of your life. Like, oh, you're a man, you make your decisions, focus on your path, whatever, blah blah blah, and things like that. And in relation to women, they're supposed to be, the submissive, the subordinate in your relationship because they're supposed to be there to, like keep your peace, quote unquote. Now, I've always thought something akin to this, not necessarily in terms of like, let's say, like red pill ideology, men and women, gender, blah, 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 whatever the fuck, and all that kind of shit. But as a narcissist, I do have a dismissive and avoidant attachment style. So I think when I've seen a lot of posts or a lot of guys that are, quote unquote, like red pill, talking about this stuff where, oh, your woman is supposed to be like your piece, quote unquote, it does enable, if that's the word that you want to use, I guess my tendencies to like break free from issues regarding a relationship with a woman, let's just say, because, oh, yeah, in terms of like hierarchy and a man taking control and like a man taking charge, quote unquote, like who's going to be on top and who's going to be at the bottom. Because, yeah, the traditional way about going at it is that, as a man, you're supposed to take leadership. And I think as a narcissist, that is comfortable in the sense that, like, okay, if I have leadership in a relationship, then, I have control. I call the shots. That makes it, I guess, feel like much more safer, because I guess like I've always correlated control and safety as just the same, because if I lay down whatever it is, then oh, that's fine. And I think another thing about it, and I never necessarily attributed it to my masculinity, and I guess more so I've only more so seen it in the lens of like my disorder. Well, actually no, I don't want to say only through the lens of my disorder, mostly, but I guess okay, the whole thing where a man is supposed to be stoic and not really have like any emotions. I do hate my emotions, admittedly. I'm not going to act like they're not there. I'm not going to act like they don't exist, quote unquote. But, emotions and feelings are very like vulnerable and I guess, capable of being like a touchy subject a lot of the time, obviously, because like that's what emotions are. They're like extremely dramatic and whatnot. And red pill stuff, along with like traditional masculinity sort of stuff, teaches you that you're supposed to be stoic and hold it all in. And I think I do have those propensities because I don't want to think that I'm vulnerable. I don't want to think that anything can like affect me whatsoever. But truth be told, I do have a lot of rage and disgust for like the world because this life is just fucking stupid. But yeah, admittedly, spending time online and getting into this whole, yeah, like red pill traditional masculinity, like, I don't know, manosphere kind of stuff, let's just say, then yeah, I think it does arguably enable that part of me that doesn't want to be like vulnerable. because that's not good for like a man, quote unquote. Or I guess from like a narcissistic lens, just in general, like it's not, you know, if you're the person on top, it's not good for you because it shows that, oh, other people can affect you. Oh, it shows that you think you're dependent upon other people, and yeah, that's just, the worst. So I think in a lot of ways, a lot of those things about the red pill have made me, perhaps because of my narcissistic personality disorder, be like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Like, okay, there's a hierarchy. Who's going to be the submissive? Women naturally are supposed to take that role, or men are naturally supposed to like take this role. I'm not even saying any of those are like the right way, but I'm just saying that in terms of like my disorder, it has always appealed in that sense. I mean, there are definitely relationships where I guess you could say women dominate the man more, or they wear the pants, so to speak. And yeah, a lot of red pill narratives do criticize and make fun of that. And when I've seen that, I think I do understand it. I don't know if I'm necessarily thinking about masculinity, quote unquote, but at least I am thinking, okay, I do not want to be the subordinate. I do not want to be the person like at the bottom, and I just so happen to be a male. So I think when I see those things, I'm inclined to kind of be like, oh yeah, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And also, I think it has done a good job at exposing some hypocrisies that like certain women can have, because I don't know, let's just say when it comes to like sleeping around, quote unquote, like I'm not going to tell you whether or not like sleeping around is, okay, let's say, but at least I never really understood the whole thing where, oh, if you're a guy and you don't want anything serious, quote unquote, like women will come at you for that because, oh, you're not mature enough to be in a relationship. You just want to like sleep around, quote unquote. But then they also say that like they want a guy, which would be the opposite of that, where, okay, he can commit to a woman, blah, 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 this or that. But yet they go around sleeping with a whole bunch of people, and yet they expect a guy like that. And I don't really get that because it doesn't seem like they're playing the part, which doesn't really make any sense. And, in a lot of ways, women will say that, oh, guys are like obsessed with sex, blah, 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 whatever, and like all that kind of stuff. But yet I've noticed on a lot of occasions, I've even had it done to me where, let's say you're arguing, and okay, with a certain woman, not all women, because I'm not going to call all of you hypocrites, let's just say, but at least with this whole like red pill traditional sort of stuff, it has highlighted, yes, like a lot of like the hypocrisy, quote unquote, because women can complain that men are too obsessed with sex, but yet they still place the standard. They're still compliant to the standard that what boosts a man's like level is like how many girls he can get. Because I mean, we've all seen it, right? And if you're a guy, I'm sure you've had it happen to you. Like if you're arguing with a woman about something, debating with a woman about something, and perhaps it's like it's completely irrelevant to like the subject, but then she might say, "Oh, I bet you get no bitches," or something like that, as if like, okay, so hold up. A guy is only worth taking seriously if he sleeps with a lot of women and has a like, high body count, but yet at the same time he's supposed to prioritize, you know, being monogamous and only devoting himself to like one particular woman. Because don't even act like a lot of girls will act disgusted, for example, if like, oh, they hear a guy has a high body count, and they're like, oh yeah, that's probably not a guy that's like serious about like finding love because he just wants to sleep around, quote unquote, blah blah blah. But yet if a man were to say like similar things and be like, oh, I don't want a woman with a high body count because perhaps if she's like sleeping around, quote unquote, she's probably not serious about finding one person to like commit to. Like she's about that lifestyle that comes to like sleeping around, quote unquote. But yet when you say the reverse, essentially the same thing that like a woman can criticize a man for, then oh, it's unnecessary misogyny. It's, slut shaming, whatever, this and this and that. But it's like, what? Why is there that double standard then? Because I think it points out that like, okay, if you don't want a man who just sleeps with a bunch of girls, just like, plays emotions, whatever, all that kind of stuff, but he's only after sex, then like, arguably, why aren't you a woman who preserves your sexuality only for like the right guy, quote unquote? And I'm not saying that you're not allowed to sleep around or like whatever, but at least like if this is what you want, like quote unquote, like you're supposed to play the part, right? Like ultimately, you can't just, have your cake and eat it too in this situation. So I think the red pill has done a good job at exposing women for that. But like strangely at the same time, it's also true that a guy who's capable of sleeping with a lot of women is oftentimes the one that a lot of women even want. I mean, I think it just like axiomatically follows that if a guy is able to sleep with a lot of women must want him. And a lot of women, I think, do have this thing going on where they want to feel special in terms of if there is a guy who sleeps around, quote unquote, and is not really committed to anything monogamous and just, goes on to like have fun, so to speak. I think they craft this like narrative in their head where yes, they want to feel like the special one in terms of if he's willing to commit for her, then there must be something special about like her in particular that he can give up this lifestyle of just sleeping around and having fun, quote unquote. Because I mean, aren't a lot of love stories like quote unquote about like the bad boy, basically follow around this sort of like narrative, and oftentimes the targeted audience for this is women, and they fucking like they hella eat it up. So clearly there's a double standard where it's sleazy if a guy wants to hook up all the time, but if he just so happens to be a man that thinks that sex is something more serious and it should only be reserved for like special connections, then oh, he's going out of his way to slut shame if he doesn't give a woman a chance who delves in, just casual hookups and sleeping around. But despite all those things that I've said in terms of the red pill highlighting some stuff that does make sense to me, I did still want to touch on the whole, I guess, ultra stoic mindset that the red pill philosophy wants you to, take in. Because I've noticed just how, like, what a sham that is. I mean, even from just like my own NPD, my own superiority is just a compensation for my, let's say, more like insecure self, insecure, like lack of self. And I know I can say that highly because how long has this red pill stuff been around? And yet the male suicide rate is still pretty high. So I guess it still does call into question for me when they say things like, oh, you should never open up to a woman. You should never open up to like your partner or something, when I would think that your partner is supposed to be there for you, your, ultimate support system, basically.